Hi everyone and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. Many non-Muslims might not know this, but Islam teaches that the Islamic God Allah had sent prophets to all nations, humans, to the entire humankind, long before the 7th century. Long before Muhammad, Allah sent prophets to all the nations in the world to call them to worship Allah and follow the laws of Allah. Yet for some reason no one ever heard of Allah. This claim is so often mentioned by Muslims and seen as self-explanatory, although it is so ridiculous. This is, I think, one of Islam's most profound but rarely challenged, baseless claims. The reason this teaching is so popular is that people somehow need to explain what happened to all those people who didn't live in the Middle East all that time and didn't hear of Allah and Islam. Which is a good question that I should certainly answer separately in detail. The Quran explains that Allah did send prophets to all those nations, which means they weren't all just created for fun, which means they didn't all live the entire time just for fun. Islam needs to make this explanation because Islam is ignorant. That's it, we're done. And because it's deceptive. In Abrahamic religion and tradition, it is known that Israelites were the people of God, and that God communicated through prophets to the Israelites, and He was among them, and led them, and cared about them, and gave them the law that was for them to follow, not for other nations. That's why in Judaism, the Jews are known as the people of God, the chosen people, Israel, and non-Jews are known as the Goyim, the Gentiles, or the non-Jews. Christianity agrees with this teaching, but also teaches that through Jesus, the message was opened up to the rest of the world. And the people of God are no longer only the Jews, but all those who believe in God. Islam adopted this message open to all humans, but kind of messed it up. Muhammad was probably not very well informed on this topic by his advisors, because the topic wasn't sex and how many of his wives he can have sex with in one night. Which is why Islam suddenly teaches that the laws of God, who is suddenly this new guy called Allah in Arabic, were from the beginning for all humankind, and that Allah sent prophets to all humankind and warned them all the time to follow the law. This is repeated in numerous Quran verses. Here are some examples. Indeed, we have sent you with the truth as a bringer of good tidings and a warner, and there was no nation but that there had passed within it a warner. Why do we always have to read religious scripture in such a weird way? And there was no nation which didn't have a warner. Good. And we certainly sent into every nation a messenger, saying, worship Allah and avoid Tawud, false deities. This is so central to Islam that many or most Muslims are not even aware that this is solely an Islamic teaching. I have several problems with the claim that prophets were sent to all nations, altogether. Problem number 1, who are these prophets? Problem number 2, where are these prophets? Number 3, why are all the prophets mentioned in Islam from the Middle East? 4, why did no one know who or what Allah is? 5, what was the purpose? If no one listened to those prophets, did Allah fail? Number 6, why is there only Semitic scripture? Number 7, why don't Christians and Jews, the chosen people, know anything about globalist Allah? Number 8, if his message was for all mankind, why were Israelites the chosen people that he cared about? Number 9, who is to blame if those nations rejected their prophets? I guess this list could go on forever, but it revolves pretty much around a basic idea. If you have more problems, please share them with me. But let's talk about this. Since Islam claims that Allah sent prophets to all the nations in the world, and no one was left uninformed about Allah and His laws, and they were all expected to follow Him, where exactly are these prophets? What are their names? When did they exist? Why doesn't Islam tell us anything about this? No Muslim can give us any information about this. We simply have no trace of such prophets. All the prophets mentioned in the Quran are Semitic prophets. Almost all of them prophets taken from the Bible. There are only 2 or 3 that are not Israelites, but those are all from the Middle East, from the Arabian Peninsula to be more specific. Why doesn't the Quran mention prophets in Europe, the southern ends of Africa, America, the northern and southern ends of Asia? Where are Indian prophets? What about nations that lived on the Pacific Islands forever? Did they have prophets? The Polynesian people lived on isolated, tiny islands, far from the rest of humanity forever. They really had prophets by the Quran's claim. Muslims themselves can't believe this because it is so absurd. Why did civilizations around the world not follow Allah? Why did no one know who or what Allah is until Islam barbarically introduced it to the world? If no one listened to those international prophets, then what exactly was the point here? Why did Allah send prophets all around the world, yet nothing was established until Christians spread monotheism and Islam started its campaign of conquests? If nations around the world were so unconvinced by Allah, so much that they are completely ignorant, that we have no traces of Allah, and people in those nations didn't have any proper chance to learn about Allah, then what was the point? Some modern sects and offshoots of Islam, like the Ahmadiyya, make an effort in claiming that characters like Krishna or Buddha or Zarathustra were prophets of Allah, but that their message was misunderstood or later corrupted, which is a ridiculous claim, and I would love to laugh about that in a separate video. Moreover, if Allah's message was for all humankind all the time, then why does Islam tell us that there were the Torah and the Psalms and the Gospel, and those were the scripture of Allah that He revealed to humans? These are all Israelite books revealed to Middle Eastern people, directly talking to them in their language, dealing with their matters. Moses, David, Jesus, and all the others. Does anyone seriously want to tell me that 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, when humans were already all over the planet, unknowing humans in South America were expected to follow Allah? What exactly were they taught? I'm curious. Why did Allah care so much about the Jews? Why was it all about Jews? Why are they the chosen people? I should come to that too. Why don't Christians and Jews know anything about this? The biblical belief is that Jews were to follow the laws of God, because they were an example, the chosen people. It is not a biblical belief that God sent prophets to all humankind all the time. That is unfamiliar. It's an Islamic invention. And frankly, it doesn't make any sense. This entire Islamic claim is baseless and refutes itself. It makes no sense. It is merely an Islamic effort to legitimize Muhammad as a non-Israelite prophet, because Jews wouldn't accept his prophethood and his unbiblical laws, because their scripture literally orders them to reject such prophets, especially if they preach something that goes against the law, and possibly to put them to death. All this looks like Jews clearly rejected Muhammad because he was not an Israelite. He didn't preach the law, so Muhammad needed to legitimize his position, his prophethood. Muslims needed to legitimize it, which is why they spread this notion that Allah sent prophets to all the nations. And today, Muslims go around seriously believing this weird, wild Islamic claim of the globalist Allah, who must have sent prophets to Samoa and Tuvalu and Hawaii, of course. Don't you get it? Aloha actually comes from the word Allah and was introduced to the Polynesian people by a Polynesian prophet of Allah sometime thousands of years ago. Aloha, Allahu Akbar. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share. Most of my videos are not monetized, so you can watch them without ads. If you want to support me and what I'm doing, you can support me on Patreon. The link is below in the description. Thank you all so much for your support. I will be back soon. Have a great day and stay away from Islam.